Good afternoon. My name is Erica Crespo with the Anti-Cancer Lifestyle Program, and with me today is the recent host of our Healthy Cooking Learning Circle, Ananda Kaplan. How are you, Ananda?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. We just had a fantastic learning circle with you last week where you shared all types of healthy cooking preparation techniques and anti-inflammatory ingredients and took a bunch of amazing questions from our attendees. And, we don't traditionally record our learning circles. So this recording today is our opportunity to make available some of the best, most popular questions that were asked during that learning circle for anyone who didn't get the chance to attend, or maybe for our attendees who just couldn't keep up with their notes fast enough to go along with all your fantastic answers.
It was a lot of information in one time. So this will be great. It can be something that people can keep with them and replay whenever they need to.
Yes. And for those who don't know, Ananda is a chef and registered dietitian and really a true expert on all things in the kitchen, healthy cooking and anti-inflammatory foods and preparation techniques. So if you're ready, I'm going to start launching into these questions.
Yes, I love questions with you.
Okay, so my first question for you is, what are your recommendations for quick and nutritious meals? This is especially important for those of us who work 9 to 5 and then also have a family and kids to take care of. We can't spend every night cooking a Thanksgiving feast. So
Yeah.
what are some recommendations when we're short on time or just flat out tired?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really great thing to just kind of have in your back pocket is some little tricks of how to prepare a really healthy, tasty, nutritious meal, right? Really quickly. And this is where I really like to keep frozen vegetables on hand. I love fresh vegetables so much, but they lots of times will take more preparation time. And when I'm really tired, it's nice to know that I can go in and I can grab some frozen vegetables that actually have the same nutrient level as the fresh vegetables and prepare some dishes with them. So lots of times what I like to do is kind of think of this idea of veggies, a grain, and some beans, right? Or some really good kind of deep sea fatty fish such as salmon, and using one pot. That is a key to this, right? Because on top of being tired and wanting to eat something really healthy, we then don't want to clean up a bunch of things. So you can combine, you can cook your grain. Let's say you're going to cook some quinoa, and about 10 minutes before it's done cooking, you lift the lid up and you can throw your frozen veggies in there. You can throw your beans, you can throw some nice herbs and spices, even some garlic cloves. Cover it back up, and 10 minutes later, you're going to have this beautiful dish that's ready for you to eat. And it's going to help kind of revive you because it's packed so full of nutrients. Another fun tip is taking a roasting pan, putting whatever frozen veggies you have on there and just throwing it in the oven, and it will be done in 15 minutes. You can roast it around 400 degrees, mix it with a little bit of oil and your favorite herbs and spices, and then you can top that on some different grains or even on a salad. Roasted veggies taste really great with some fresh arugula and some spinach, and then just drizzle a little olive oil on there. And you could even mix in some chickpeas if you have them on hand. So just kind of taking that concept of usually 3 different ingredients, kind of combining it together, making it quick. Another great go-to is always taking a really great piece of bread, like some sourdough bread, toasting it, putting some hummus and putting some arugula right on top of it. And that will satisfy your taste buds and really satisfy your body.
I love that. One pot and one tray meals. I usually get stuck with the cleaning. So that sounds like a lot easier post-dinner task than multiple utensils and pans. So my next question for you, Ananda, is what is the best way to cook beans from scratch and make them taste good?
So one of the most important things with beans that you want to do is soak them before you cook them. And we're going to get into that probably a little bit later. Just going over the exact technique of soaking them. But after you have your soaked beans and you've discarded the soaking liquid, the cooking process is really important to making them taste really good, right? And the nice thing about cooking beans from scratch, you can cook a huge amount at one time, and you can actually freeze them for up to 5 months. And so you can freeze them in tiny little packages and then just pull them out of your freezer and cook them from frozen, or kind of reheat them when you want to eat them. So the best way to do this is you take your beans and you're going to place them in a huge pot, right? And just about 2 inches of water above the beans. You don't really need to measure it. You can eyeball it. If it's a little above 2 inches, that's totally fine. A little under, that's fine too. And then you're just going to turn it on and bring it up to a boil and reduce it down to a simmer and let it be for about 30 minutes. And then right at that 30-minute point, kind of that outer shell of the beans has started to soften. And this is this sweet point that we can add flavoring to the water. And then as it continues to cook, it's going to go inside the beans and really flavor it from the inside out. So you could add a bay leaf to the water. You could add, when I have black beans or pinto beans, I'll add some cumin, some coriander, some paprika. If I have some white beans cooking, I'll throw in some fresh herbs in there and some garlic cloves, even some dried rosemary, just kind of playing more up on those like Italian flavors. And it's really fun to kind of play around with different flavors and different spices and see what kind of ones you like. Now, all beans are going to have a different cooking time. They usually range between 1 hour to 2 hours. So you kind of want to check them every 30 minutes to see how soft they are. And they're really done when you take one of the beans out and you can press it just lightly and it starts to kind of mush down. That's when you know it's tender enough. There are a few beans, though, that you don't have to soak before cooking, and those are azuki beans and lentils. So lentils are a really great thing to kind of have on hand, and they cook really fast, right? They cook in about 30 minutes. So these are ones that you want to actually flavor right from the beginning. Right when you put them in the water to start cooking them, add your spices, add your garlic, add your bay leaves, and then they'll be really tender and really flavorful. So those are some great kind of ways that you can add some extra boost of flavor to your beans, and they're gonna, be really nice and easily digested.
Those fantastic tips. So many of us can't imagine a kitchen without cooking spray. But when it comes to spray cooking oil, are items like Pam bad for you?
So we use them in pretty small amounts. But the problem is that if we continue to keep using only Pam or a lot of these different spray oils, it's not exactly the oil per se that's the problem. It's what they put into these spray bottles with the oil, right? They'll add different chemicals that can be anti-foaming agents that we actually don't know much about what it does to our body. Along with lots of times there will be like soy lecithin in them, or a soy isolate type of thing. Now, soy is not bad for you in a sense when it's in its whole form, but we have seen when they start isolating it out, it can not be as healthy and it can be a little pro-inflammatory. So that's where I like to say, going back to very simple oils to use. I know that it's so easy to grab the spray, right? But lots of times, if you make sure to have different oils on hand, having an avocado oil or a coconut oil and an olive oil, and just getting in the habit of starting to use these oils that come from ingredients that we can really consume, it is really easy to kind of make that switch over. If we just don't have it in our house, lots of times we won't miss it if we make sure to have something to replace it with.
So staying on that topic of oil, many, as you know, in our community are cancer survivors or going through cancer treatment right now. So one of the questions that came in is, should you be oil-free if you have cancer?
Yeah, that is a great question, right? Because we hear that there can be a lot of harmful things from oils oxidizing and stuff like that. And that's why it's very important to have the right oil for the right heat, That is one thing. And
Mhm.
I tell people that, just like we need carbohydrates and we need protein in our body, we also need fats in our body. And what that does is that helps us actually absorb fat soluble vitamins. Now, we don't need huge amounts of it. So,
Mhm.
this is when I say it's good to kind of stay away from like fried food, things that are like doused in oil, right? But having like a little bit of a drizzle of olive oil on your salad or drizzling in some avocado oil on your vegetables that you're about to roast, this is actually going to increase the absorption of those fat soluble vitamins such as vitamin A and K and E and D in the different ingredients that you're taking in, along with some other antioxidants that really love to be with different fats as they're kind of going into our body. So I don't think it's necessary for you to be oil free. I think it's just important to kind of pick the right oils to consume and maybe not have huge amounts of it.
Staying in this topic of cancer survivors, can you talk a little bit about dairy and red meat and if they're harmful to cancer survivors?
Yeah, so this has always been a really big topic. And I do want to actually separate out the dairy and the red meat. For many years, it's been clumped together because they're both saturated fat. And so they really thought whatever they saw in meat went for dairy also. But we're finally starting to see that it's very different in our bodies, the way that red meat and the way that dairy kind of can cause different things in our bodies. So red meat has a really big kind of pro-inflammatory response in our body most of the time, right? And the biggest thing is about how we cook the red meat. Once we start kind of searing it or cooking it at these high heats, it can create actual cancer causing or cancer activating properties. But one thing I do want to bring up that was a really cool study is they looked at different individuals having different diets. One of them that they gave to them was very high in red meat. And then another one was moderate in red meat, but then very high in vegetables, high fiber vegetables, right? And then the last group just was on a plant-based, consuming a little bit of dairy here and there. Now they took stool samples and they measured these and they wanted to kind of measure those cancer causing properties that they can actually find in that. And, not surprising, the group that was consuming the highest amount of red meat had a lot higher amounts of these cancer causing properties than the group that was consuming the red meat with the high fiber vegetables. They actually found that it kind of balanced itself out. And then the group that was plant-based had the lowest amount. And they also saw their body was able to kind of correct inflammation a little bit quicker than the other groups. But what they found from this that was really amazing is that fact that we eat as a whole. We don't eat just separate little things. And this is where we can use that idea of combining food. That if you're craving a tiny bit of red meat, have a little portion, but make sure to pair it with really great fibrous vegetables like broccoli or cruciferous vegetables that are going to kind of help balance that out. Now with the dairy, it gets a little more difficult to kind of say if it's good or if it's bad. The research is really shows very different things. And this is where I say it's a very personal thing. If you find that when you consume dairy, you just do not feel good from it, make sure to stay away from it then, right? Don't let anyone tell you you should have it if it makes you feel bad. Now, they have seen people who consume, some yogurt on a daily basis because those probiotics can really help feed our gut and help lower that inflammation and help kind of build up our immune system. So they have seen some great results with that. But this is where I think it's a very personal choice with dairy.
So what is your opinion, though, on dairy consumption?
I do think that, throughout history, we had this kind of thing, especially in America, where it was like, a glass of milk builds these strong bones, and
it's like from the 50s, right? The 50s and 60s, those milk commercials.
It was so much, right? It was really pushing that. And they did this whole thing of like really making us believe that is the only place we can get calcium. You know, if you cut out dairy, you will have no calcium in your whole life. And that's just not true, right? And this is why I say, you know, a lot of people cannot digest dairy. The majority of the world, right?
One of them right here.
Yeah, exactly. The majority of the world does not have that enzyme in their intestines. And the majority of us, even when we do have it, they watch the infinity of it actually go down as we get older, right? I used to be able to drink milk. I can't really drink milk much anymore, maybe a little bit here and there. I can have yogurt though. I'm okay with that. Like, and so I think a lot of times forcing us to consume dairy because that's what we were told isn't the way to go. It's this idea of a variety of the diet, right? And knowing that if you can't have dairy, there are so many other options for calcium, just like leafy green vegetables have some of the most bioavailable calcium in them. And then along with another amazing components in them that are really going to help with inflammation and in your body. So that's where I think, you know, my opinion of it is I don't want social constructs or what we've been taught to push us into consuming something that doesn't make us feel good. Now, if you enjoy it here and there and you feel good when you have it, then there's nothing wrong with that.
So there were a lot of questions about flax seeds during our learning circle. So can you talk a little bit about the health benefits of flax seeds? And if I remember correctly, it was something about they should be grounded before. If you could talk a little bit about that too.
Definitely. So flax seeds are an awesome thing to use in so many different capacities of cooking. They add this really beautiful kind of nutty, earthy flavor to things. But beyond the like great taste, right? Having them ground is really important because it allows our body to actually absorb all the amazingness that's inside of them. When they're in their whole form, they're a little too protected for our body to be able to break them down. They're not going to really do any harm to you if you ate tons and tons of whole flax seeds. You might have a little bit of a bellyache. But so this is why it's important, either buy them ground or you can grind them yourself. If you have a coffee grinder or a, you know, spice grinder, you can always throw them in there and grind them yourself. Another thing is they last for so long. And I like to keep mine in my fridge and it makes it last even longer. Now, health benefit wise, they are an amazing source of omega-3s in a plant-based form, right? We always talk about fish being this amazing source of omega-3s, but a lot of people don't eat fish. Even people who aren't vegetarian might have a dislike for fish. And this is a really great source that they can get those anti-inflammatory omega-3 properties that can also help feed their gut and help build up the immune system. They're also a great thing to use in baked goods if you don't eat eggs. You can actually mix a little bit of flaxseed with some water and it starts to gel. And that gelling thing is a really big kind of tell-all of how amazing it is for our intestines. As we see it starting to gel, different things that actually have that gelling component, that gelling thing does the same thing in our intestines and actually helps protect the lining of the intestines to any toxins as they're going in. So not only does it help with the inflammation, it can actually help protect your intestines while you're eating.
Wow. I'm thinking of chia seeds. I love chia seeds.
Exactly.
And I know how healthy they are. I didn't realize that fact about the gel, though, and what it can do inside your body. That's fascinating.
Yeah. So many great things. Yeah. Chia seeds and flax seeds are really fun to kind of, they're very interchangeable and can be used in very similar preparations. The chia adds a little more sweetness and the flaxseed adds a little bit more nutty earthness.
Got it. Okay, so my last question for you today, we're going to come back full circle to our conversation about beans.
Yes.
So we know how to prepare them now, make them all tasty, but what about soaking the beans? grains, rice. Why is that important, and how long should we be doing that for?
So it's very, very important. They have seen so many benefits from soaking your beans and your grains, rice included, right? Not only because it's going to make your rice and your grains fluffier, and it's going to make your beans more tender and kind of cut down on the cooking time, but this whole soaking process where you're going to take your beans or your grains, place them in a bowl or a jar with about double the amount of warm water and just a little bit of acid, about a fourth of a teaspoon of vinegar, or take like half a lemon, do a little squeeze over it. And then you really want to leave it overnight. If you don't have a whole night to soak them, up to 4 hours is a really great amount of time. And so what this process does is it starts breaking down some of the holding, binding things within the grains and the beans. And it actually releases all of those nutrients and minerals into them. So as we eat them, it gets absorbed really easily. It also helps break down certain areas of the grains and beans that are hard to digest. Another thing I did learn is it also actually can reduce down the arsenic in rice by about 80%.
Wow.
Amazing, right?
Wow.
So after you soak your beans and it starts doing all these amazing reactions in there, the next day when you get them, this is a very important step. You want to drain your beans, get rid of that liquid, and rinse them with nice fresh water. And then they are ready to kind of be cooked and enjoyed to the fullest. So it is one of my favorite ancient culinary kind of tips. This has been done in cultures dating back thousands and thousands of years. They have evidence of showing that people actually soaked grains and beans. And so it's a really beautiful thing to bring it forward into these days so we get the maximum benefit and the maximum flavor and tastiness from these ingredients.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me today, Ananda. This is so useful for me as well. So I can only imagine it will be for the viewers. But, I mentioned at the beginning of this afternoon that we traditionally haven't recorded learning circles. Well, we're switching that up. We will be recording them from here on out. And we're also changing the name to Ask the Expert. We have so many wonderful experts, just like yourself, as the host of these learning circles. And because so much time of our now Ask the Expert events are dedicated to Q&A, as you know, we thought we need to change this name a little bit to something that's more reflective of what this event is. So if you're watching this, we hope you'll join us for an upcoming Ask the Expert event. You can find those on our website, anticancerlifestyle.org. And Ananda, this was a pleasure talking with you today. I learned so much. Thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It was so enjoyable.
All right, have a good night.
You too.